Welcome to the Oilers live stream. Thanks so much for tuning in. I'm Jessica Kent. There's a major announcement coming out of Oilers Entertainment Group this morning. We'll have the live coverage in just a few moments, plus reaction following. Stay with us. Welcome to the Oilers live stream. Thanks so much.
All right, this is quite the crowd assembled today. It's nice to see everybody here. I want to start by welcoming everybody to the extraordinary Rogers Place here in the heart of Ice District, which is transforming and energizing Edmonton's downtown as we build towards the full opening of the district in about a year's time. So incredibly excited to see everybody here today for a big announcement. We have to say a very special thank you to Oilers fans across oil country and around the world for tuning in today. And that unwavering support and passion that you bring to the team is truly appreciated and energizes us in everything that we do. My name is Tim Shipton, Senior Vice President of Oilers Entertainment Group. I'll be your MC today. We'll hear from our distinguished speakers, followed by a Q&A, and then some time for one-on-ones. So at this time, I'm incredibly delighted to turn the program over to Chairman of Cates Group, owner of the Edmonton Oilers, Mr. Daryl Cates. Daryl?
Well, thank you, Tim. Good morning, everyone. We appreciate you showing up on such short notice. It's nice to see everybody. We're here this morning to talk about the future leadership of the Edmonton Oilers and what we're doing and what our plans are to give our fans the team they deserve this season and in the years to come. As you will have heard, no doubt, and read, the first step in that program is the hiring of Ken Holland as the new President of Hockey Operations and General Manager of the Edmonton Oilers. As you know, this was a decision I entrusted to Bob Nicholson My charge to him was to find the right person to oversee hockey operations from top to bottom and someone he could work with. I want to thank Bob for putting his heart and soul into this effort. I know the time it took, and I know the time you spent, Bob, and I have every confidence in the process that he ran, and I'm very excited about the decision. Bob will have more to say about Ken in a minute, but let me just say that when it comes to hiring someone with the experience, credibility, and authority to make an immediate impact, which is what we need, nobody else comes close. More than that, we didn't hire Ken just because of what he has done in the past. We hired him for what he can do for the Oilers right now and in the years ahead. Above all, Ken commands a respect from players, scouts, other executives throughout the hockey world, not only throughout the hockey world, throughout the entire sports world. And he knows how to build a culture of winning. Now, there are a lot of bright minds in hockey, young bright minds in hockey today. I know Bob talked to many of them during our search. But at the end of the day, it became abundantly clear that Ken was by far the right candidate for the job. And having gotten Ken Holland, yes, you can be sure he will have full autonomy as general manager. You can ask him, but I don't think he would be here if that wasn't the case. I want to say just a few more things before I turn it over to Bob and Ken. One, we have not delivered on the promise we made to our fans in recent years. You know it, and I know it, and we all know it. And while accountability for this falls on everyone in our organization, it starts and it stops with me. And I want you to know we're listening to our fans, we get it, and we're doing everything we can to get it right. Secondly, Ken will report to Bob, and as I said, have full autonomy on all hockey matters and personnel. But the two of them will work collaboratively, and Bob will keep me in the loop and up to speed relative to what they're doing, as he has in the past. Finally, I believe in this team, and I believe in this city. That's why I'm especially proud to be the owner of the Oilers and why we built this incredible new arena. That's why we're building one of the greatest developments in the world, Ice District. And that's why when Bob came to me and said Ken was our guy, I did everything necessary and that I could to bring him here. I know our fans don't want plans or promises, they want results. And so do we. All I'm saying is that with our core players, our prospects, Bob's leadership, and now Ken as president of hockey operations and general manager, we're on track. And we couldn't all be more excited about the future. And with that, I will turn it over to Bob.
Thank you very much, Darryl. And first of all, thanks for your support through this process. It certainly was a long process, a deep process. But Kenny, I look up here, it makes me pretty excited. Ken Holland, Oilers behind. You've been a Red Wing for so long and they've done such a great job. I've knowing you for so long. I'm so excited. I know the whole organization is so excited to have you lead our hockey operations. I look back to February when I started this approach to look for a general manager, and I said a general manager. You're hearing today that he is a president and general manager because of what he's done in the past and what he'll do in the future. His resume stands by itself. But I just want to spend a moment saying that I interviewed a lot of people, a lot of very good people through the process. Through the process, I saw that Ken Holland was turning the reins over to Steve Yzerman, and I watched that very closely. Because of the relationship I had with Steve, the relationship with Ken. And then just in the last few days, did we get down to have some very serious talks about Ken being here. And it went very quickly because of our long relationship. And I'd already narrowed down the process. And I do want to recognize one other person in this process, and that's Keith Gretzky. Keith Gretzky did a great job as the interim general manager. Keith Gretzky was through the whole process, but I had to make a recommendation to Daryl Cates, who was going to be the president and general manager, and there was only one person that I recommended to Daryl, and that was Ken Holland. Ken, I know that you've got a lot of work to do in front of you, but when you look at a resume as a general manager in the National Hockey League, this is the type of person that we want to lead this organization. Daryl's already said this already, and we've had a lot of good discussion on it. Ken will lead hockey operations from top to bottom. I will work with Ken to make sure that he has all those avenues open for him to do whatever it takes to make the Edmonton Oilers successful. I have a great relationship with Daryl. We're starting that relationship with Ken. We had a great night last night. We're going to continue to do that so that the three of us work together to make sure that we go forward in a very positive way. First of all, for our players, our staff, and our fans. We know that there's frustration with the fans, but I can tell you today, with naming Ken Holland as a general manager and president of hockey operations, this is a perfect step for us to move forward in a positive way. So Ken, great to have you on the team.
Thank you. First off, it's an incredibly exciting day for me and my family. I'm a Western Canadian boy. I was born in Vernon, British Columbia. I played junior hockey in Medicine Hat, Alberta in the mid-'70s, and then after I played 9 years of pro, I started scouting for the Red Wings and spent 10 years living in Medicine Hat from 1985 to 1994. So love the prairies, and obviously very, very familiar with the history of the Edmonton Oilers. Before I go into that a little bit, I do want to thank a couple of people. It's been an emotional time for me the last couple of weeks. I've been with the Detroit Red Wings for 36 years. The last 22 as the general manager of the Detroit Red Wings, and I'd say as the process went along for me, that I knew that Steve Yzerman was going to be taking over. The owners in Detroit gave me an unbelievable offer to remain with the Red Wings in a senior vice president role. And I went over to the World Under-18 Championships with Steve, with Chris Draper, with the Red Wings staff. And as I was over there, I realized that I had the passion, the energy, the enthusiasm, the desire to continue to be a general manager in the National Hockey League. And when I got back, Bob reached out to me, and we spent a lot of time on the phone over the last few days, and ultimately came to the decision to be here today. I'd like to thank Daryl and Renee Cates for believing in me and entrusting me to be the general manager of the Edmonton Oilers and to lead this team. And my goal, obviously, is to lead this team to become an elite team in the National Hockey League. And I think that there's lots of key pieces here that are in place. Again, being a manager for 22 years, I don't care where your team is in the standings, there's always work that needs to be done. Whether you're high up in the standings, there's the salary cap that's going to affect you, and you got to figure out how to stay up there. And when you're building, you got to try to figure out how to move your way up the ladder. But there's lots of great pieces in place here. Certainly, as I analyzed, as Bob and I talked about coming to Edmonton, certainly the players, I know that Darryl is incredibly motivated as an owner to have a great team. And Darryl had talked about he's got the most beautiful building in the world here, the Ice District across the street. So certainly Darryl is committed to this team and to this city. So all those were factors, major factors in me making a decision to leave Detroit and come to Edmonton. So today is a incredibly exciting day for me. Another person I do want to also recognize back in Detroit is Jim Devellano, who was my role model and mentor when I got into the business in 1985. He was the general manager of the Red Wings. He moved me up the ranks from Western Scout to Chief Scout to assistant general manager, and he recommended to Mr. and Mrs. Silich in 1997 that they hire me as the general manager of the Detroit Red Wings. And then I'd like to also thank the Illich family for their support through the years in allowing me to fulfill my dream and be an NHL general manager, and we went on and won some Stanley Cups. So certainly it's an exciting day for me. My family, I have a daughter that lives in Calgary. My wife has a sister and a brother that live in Calgary. Cindy has three sisters that live in Medicine Hat. My wife's, Cindy's dad lives in Medicine Hat. So prairies are home for us. We're excited to be here in Edmonton. I'm excited to work with Bob. I enjoyed the process with Bob. Bob and I go back. Bob's from Penticton, BC. I'm from Vernon. In 2005, I think I was the assistant manager with Hockey Canada World Entry. 2006, Bob made me the general manager of the team in Latvia. I was involved with the Olympic team in 2010, the Olympic team in 2014. So I've got a tremendous relationship with Bob, his wife Lorna, and my wife Cindy. Hit it off at all the tournaments. So as I went through the whole process, the relationship with Bob, the commitment of Darryl to this team, the history of this team, you're looking at some great young players on this team. It was a natural fit for me to make a decision to move to Edmonton and become the general manager and president of the Edmonton Oilers. And I'm very, very excited. We have a lot of work to do, but again, the goal is to build this team into an elite team, be in the playoffs, and one day, hoist the Stanley Cup over your head. Lots of things need to happen. Lots of building blocks, lots of work have to be done. Just a couple things, and you guys are going to ask me a lot of questions. I talked to Ken Hitchcock last night. I told Ken that he would not be the coach of the Edmonton Oilers in 1920. I did talk to his assistants today to inform them that I had told Ken I'm going to start a process here immediately. That would be my number one priority, obviously in the next few weeks, to find the next head coach of the Edmonton Oilers. At the same time, what I want to do is talk to as many people as I can. Talk to Bob. I talked to Ken Hitchcock last night. I've talked to the coaches. I'm trying to gather information as I go about the process of making decisions, what to do with staff, and as we lead. This is the time of the year in the National Hockey League. You make your moves from probably the 20th of June to early July through whatever trades you can make at the draft. Obviously the draft, July 1st free agency. So this is the period of time when you're doing your planning. Next week we're going to have amateur meetings, pro meetings. I look forward to meeting all those people, and I will make some decisions. I do expect to have some change. I'm not going to give you a time frame on change, but I do expect to have some change, and I look forward to working with all you going forward.
Thank you so much, gentlemen. We're going to jump into the Q&A now. Let's go up front here, Ryan.
Ken, Ryan Rashog with TSN. Maybe just right to the on-ice product, your thoughts on the biggest needs this team has and what a realistic timeline is for playoff hockey?
Well, I would say to you, my hope is, Ryan, my hope is that I can come in and provide stability, select a coach that's going to have a real impact on this team, and I'd like to think we're talking playoffs in 1920. When you look at some of the young players on this team, I know they missed the playoffs by 10 points, but I think he got off to a tough start, and then unfortunately over the course of the season, Bob had to Peter let the coach go, and then Bob let the manager go, and I think those are distractions for the players. So I'm hoping that the stability that I can provide will allow the players to play, and my thought is that we're going to compete for a playoff spot in 1920. At the same time, we want to build, we want to grow. It's more than just about making the playoffs. It's about trying to make the playoffs year after year after year, and then go on some playoff runs. And that's where you need, obviously, building blocks. I've got my thoughts on the team. Certainly, there's a great core. I have to build around that core, and we're going to go down to Bakersfield, San Diego playoff tomorrow night. Game 3 and Game 4 tomorrow and Friday, Saturday hopefully, and I'd like to look at some of the players down there. I've seen Bouchard play junior. I've seen Samorukov play junior. Those are two players that I was at the World Junior, and I was out scouting this year for the Red Wings, so I've seen some of the young players that the Oilers have in their system, and there's some good young players. I believe in player development. I believe in time in the minors. Mike Babcock used to say, Ken Holland would say, overripe. I believe that the National Hockey League is the toughest league in the world, and if you put young players in the league too quick, more likely that they're going to fail than succeed. So we've got to find some. I think we got a core up front. Got to figure out how to surround them properly, and then look at the defense. Certainly, you got a goaltender. Got to probably have to get another goaltender. And again, priority one is to find a coach.
Up front here. Yep.
Again, Mark Spector from Sportsnet. This organization has missed the playoffs 12 out of 13 years. You presided over one of the best winning cultures in the modern era in the NHL. How do you change the culture macro, and how do you change it in the dressing room?
Actually, Bob and I had a lot of talk and with Darryl last night. I guess I would say to you, Mark, my management style in Detroit was stability, and we had. When I joined the Red Wings in 1983, the Ilitches have owned the team since 1983. Darryl's been here for 11 years, and spending time with Darryl's got passion. So my job is to provide stability. I don't believe my job is to find the right people, believe in them on the ice and off the ice, support them. The young players, put them in the American League, let them grow into NHL players, come into the NHL. I understand I'm coming here and they've made the playoffs once out of 13 years. This is a passionate fan base. And I had in my notes here, which I forgot. I remember in 2006, when the Oilers beat us out in the first round of the playoffs, we had, I think, about 128 points. And coming into Edmonton for games 3, 4, and 6 was absolutely crazy. The emotion in the building. And I thought that the Oiler fans had an impact on the Oilers knocking us out of the playoffs in 2006. So certainly I know if we can get it going, the fans are going to rally behind us, and they're going to push our players and our team and our organization to greater heights. So how do I get it going? We get it going by stability. Got to have a plan. I've got to meet, I got to gather information, and then start to make moves on and off the ice that I believe are going to impact the team in a positive way. I don't have a magic wand. I don't believe there's one trade and all of a sudden things turn. It's a move at a time. It's a move at a time. It's a piece at a time. It's going down in the locker room. It's providing stability. It's knowing that we've got a plan and we're going to push forward with the plan. And the plan is, we've got to compete. I like to play with speed. Obviously, you want to get as much skill as you can. The Red Wings, I was there for 22 years. 19 years we made the playoffs in a row. Maybe one there was work stoppage, but the last 3 we were obviously we went in a rebuild, and as our team went through that run of We won the Cups in 97, 98, 08, and 02 and 08. We were getting into rebuild mode. And I'm proud of that. I think as I look at the Detroit Red Wings today, again, they've got a lot of work to do, but there's some pieces in place and there's some draft picks. And I think the same thing here when I come to Edmonton. You got to have a plan and you got to stick to the plan. And the plan is to build, for the most part, you got to build through the draft, but we got to go outside the organization and bring in pieces that we think are going to help. Some are maybe going to be expensive pieces. Some are going to be the cheaper players that are really good fits for a short time. The key building blocks are here. The key building blocks are here. And in the organization, we got to add to them. But I think that this team, this organization is ready. They're waiting for us. They're waiting for this team to start to win and make the playoffs, and the place will go crazy. I saw it in 2008. So that's my job. That's my job. And in talking to Bob and Darryl, they've given me full authority. That's certainly one of the. I'd been in Detroit for so long and had incredible relationship with the ownership there. So, and then we went into a salary cap world in 2005. And I'm proud that we were the last team to miss the playoffs in a salary cap world. Everybody in the league missed the playoffs in the salary cap world. We were the last team, and we had to go from a $80 million payroll in 2005 down to a $39 million payroll. We were able to find some pieces, Dan Cleary and Andreas Lilja and this guy and that guy, and piece it together. But we had the core. We had the young Zetterberg and Datsuk, and I was able to work around the core. That core is here. So I've got a core to work with. Now I got to go out and support that core, find a coach, and provide stability, and build a program here that our fan base is excited about.
Let's go to Terry and then Jim and then
Terry
back.
Jones, Edmonton Sun and Journal. Ken, can you, let's carry on with the salary cap there. Can you speak to the situation that you're taking over with the salary cap in Edmonton, but also the situation you left in Detroit and the complications that you got involved in there, and if you could too touch on the future of Keith Gretzky.
It's a lot of questions. Number one is the salary cap here. I've gone over it. I would say to you, Terry, most teams have salary cap issues. That's the reality of being a general manager in the National Hockey League in 2019. If you don't have issues, you're probably a team that's on the rebuild. So most teams have speed bumps, or however you want to look at them, that you have to work around. The salary cap in Detroit, they've got $20 million of salary cap space as you and I speak today, leading into July 1st. Next year, I think $12 to $15 million come off. So Detroit's got a ton of cap space. I would say to you, Terry, I've been a manager for 22 years. I'm going to make some bad decisions. Like, if you think you're going to make decisions over 22 years and you're never going to make a bad decision, I'd like to meet that guy, because I don't think it exists. You got to make more good decisions than bad decisions, and I think I made way more good decisions in Detroit than bad decisions. But I did make some decisions that didn't work out the way that I thought. But you make those decisions based upon the information at hand. You talk to your people. I'm a general manager that likes to bring my people into the mix. I don't make the decision all on my own. I talk to my people, I gather information, and I make a decision. And if the decision doesn't work out the way we want it to, I got to work around that decision. What's the other question? Keith. I have not talked to Keith. Obviously, I got a tremendous amount of respect for Keith. I do want to talk to Keith. I would like to keep Keith in the organization. But I have not spoken to him, but certainly he is on my list to talk to very soon.
Thanks, Terry. Jim?
Jim Matheson, Post Media. Welcome, Ken. A couple of questions. One, is it easier as a general manager to come in when you've got Draisaitl and McDavid and you don't have to find star players? You can build down the lineup as opposed. And the other question is, why not Ken Hitchcock as coach?
Yeah, good. Absolutely. I mean, obviously, they're two young superstars. I mean, I don't know, they're 21 and 22 or 22 and 23. Connor is, maybe the greatest young player in the game with everything he's accomplished. And I think his better days are ahead of him still. He's not even in his prime yet. Leon had 50 goals and a great second half. So obviously two massive building blocks. And why not Ken Hitchcock? I just think coming in here, this is an opportunity for me to make change. And I talked to Ken last night. Certainly I'm going to talk to Ken. I've known Ken for a long, long time, back to the early 90s when I was the chief scout of the Detroit Red Wings, and he was coaching Kamloops. I used to go talk to him about his players. So I've got a relationship going back 25, 30 years with Ken. I just think it was time to make change and an opportunity for me to go through a process and hire a coach. If I hired Ken, it's probably another year. I'd like to find a coach that I can go to work with. I hired Jeff Blau. I hired Mike Babcock. I worked with Mike for 10 years. Before Mike, I had Dave Lewis for 2 years, and I've hired Jeff Blashill, and this is year 4. I like to build a relationship. I build a relationship and go to work, and again, it's going to be up and down. It's never smooth sailing, and I need to find a coach that we're going to work with. We're going to bunker in, and we're going to go to work with one common goal. And I just think it was time. This is an opportunity for me to go through that process to find that coach.
Yeah. Thanks. Jason at the back.
2 questions. For Jason Greger, TSN 1216 Oilers Nation. For Bob and Darryl. Ken just talked about an opportunity and time for change. There hasn't been a lot of change, really. Like Peter Chiarelli came in, and the only addition he made in the management was Keith Gretzky. Darryl, you've watched this team. You've obviously invested a lot of money in it. Do you feel there needs to be, you've changed a lot of players and coaches in that time, a few GMs. Do you need other change in the upper part in scouting and management of your team?
Let me take that first, Darryl. There has been a lot more change than Keith Gretzky. When you look at the pro scouting side of it and to the amateur side of that, Peter Chiarelli made changes over the first 2 years. His major person that he brought in was Keith Gretzky. But throughout the whole operations, Peter made a lot of changes, and Ken's going to go through the exact same process, and he'll set his timelines and set his process of how he'll do that and we have some really good assets, some really good people, but that will be Ken to go through, have those discussions with those people, and then form his own hockey operations.
And Ken, for you, obviously you built a real winning tradition in Detroit. Culture is a term that some people don't necessarily like because it simplifies things, but it's very deep in how you bring just an energy and a belief system to the organization. How long do you think it takes to do that? Because when you came into Detroit, prior to that, I think they'd lost 9 years in a row, right? And you were just in the early years. How do you build that foundation so it's strong and a winning culture, not just on the ice, but off of it?
That is a great question. Obviously, ultimately, winning is going to make everything good. Now, how do you start to win? It's about people. What's culture? To me, culture is people. Culture is the people that you bring in on the ice and off the ice, and they care about the logo. And one of the things that I tried to sell as the general manager as the Detroit Red Wings was, you earn the jersey. Whether you're a young player, you got to earn the jersey. You just don't get to put the jersey on because you were a high draft pick, or you got to earn the jersey, and you got to go to work every day, and you got to respect that jersey, and you got to play hard. And the Red Wings we didn't have a very good year this year, but I think we were involved like almost 51 goal games. We lost a lot of games close. The team played hard. The young kids were starting to take over the team, and I think we were heading in the right direction. And guys like Nick Cronwell and some of those veteran players have been a real positive impact on those young players. They don't know it, but they're going to find out 5-6 years from now when they start to reflect back on the people that had an impact on their career. So it's finding some veterans, it's having those veteran players. You have young players. You got to challenge those young players. You give the young players an opportunity, but the coach has to make them accountable. There has to be an accountability in the locker room and on the front office. And I guess at the end of the day, What's a culture? You got to work. It's a work ethic. It's a compete every day. The league is so hard to win. You got to compete. Your scouts got to compete. Your managers got to compete. Your coaches have got to compete. We're competing with 31 other organizations that are the best in the world, and you got to grind. You grind. And I guess that's who I am. And I love to play golf. And I love to grind. I like to get up and down. I don't want to hit it on the green. I like to get up and down. You know what I mean? Get up and down from a bunker. I like it when life is tough. Life is tough. You got to grind. You got to dig in. So culture is about finding when life is tough. Right now, times are tough. The team has made the playoffs once in 13 years, and Daryl and Bob have made a decision to bring me in. I've got to come in, and I've got to change the culture. And I believe they've given me complete authority. I've got to provide stability. I've got to find the right people. Some of them are in this organization. Maybe I got to go outside and bring some people outside the organization. That's the process that I got to go through here over the next period of time, and that's ongoing. So that's what my experience in Detroit told. And then obviously it's great players. Great players. I got the pleasure to work with Yzerman and Lidstrom and Zetterberg and Datsuk. They were great players, and they really cared. And I saw that when Scotty Bowman came in, and how Steve Yzerman decided that determined he was going to less points and block more shots and win more draws. But the young players don't know that. They want to come in and they want to do what they've always done. So there's a process with young players, and that's why you need veteran. I'd like to think that's what I'm going to bring here as a veteran manager. I'm going to hire a coach that I believe is also going to bring that. Find the right mix of players to support the core, and we got to create some excitement. We got to get the fans to believe. We got to get the fans to believe that I'm the right guy, that I can put a plan in place to get them excited. And that's what we did in Detroit. That's what Jim Devellano did in Detroit when the Ilitches hired him in 1983. And by the late 80s, early 90s, we had her going, and we had drafted good. We had young players going. And once you get it going, now you got her going. So there's lots of pieces here. It's up to me to add to those pieces, to try to figure out the right chemistry, to figure out how to support some of those key pieces that are here through the decisions that we make on players on the ice, but also the decisions that I make in the staff.
Okay, we got time for a couple more. We'll go up front to Bob, and then last question.
Ken, Bob Stauffer, Oilers Radio Network. I'll be the geek here and ask the question about analytics and, for a lack of a better term, sports science. Just your thought on maybe how the importance of those two areas have changed over the last several years and where you're at with that.
I believe in analytics. I believe it's a tool. I don't believe it makes your decisions. I think that what we did in Detroit, I've always been analytics. I remember sitting I became manager in 1997, and 1998 and 1999, and saying, okay, how many goals are Dallas going to score this year? How many goals is Colorado going to score? Our peer group, how many goals is Jersey going to score? And I looked and tried to figure out, do we have enough offense? And then you got to be goals against. Now those are basic analytics. Well, the analytics today are way deeper than that. So analytics has always been, I'm a numbers guy. And so analytics is something that, we had somebody in Detroit, we would play, the Edmonton Oilers are coming into town, and Jeff Blashill would talk to our analytics guy about numbers, and he would give him numbers as Jeff went into the game to make decisions on matchups and line, whatever he wanted to do. So certainly the head coach was talking to our analytics person, and we're the same thing in the amateur draft and in the pro scouting, looking at statistics. But it's a guide. Certainly, I need people in the field that I respect, that are watching games, and they've got instincts and they've got experience, and you put the two together and you eventually make a decision. And I want to come back to Terry, and you're going to make the odd bad decision. I want you to know, I'm going to make the odd bad decision. You can't make, if you're going to make or you make no decisions. You make no decisions and you don't make any bad decisions. So got to make way more good decisions than bad decisions. But certainly analytics is it's a piece of the process.
Thank you. Fletcher.
And Mr. Cates, you'd spoken earlier about how you weren't satisfied with how things have been going the past few years. And we've heard from a number of season ticket holders over the last little while, their displeasure as well, some of them talking about not renewing their season tickets. How has some of this displeasure affected the business side of things? And how do you feel about what you're hearing from some of the fans and how that plays into what's happening here today?
Look, at our intention from the outset, and especially today, relative to bringing Kenny into the organization, is to build, as you've said, an elite team. And that takes the right people and the right plan. And to Kenny's point, I've never suggested that we haven't made some mistakes or wrong decisions, but the objective has always been the same. And that's why you see the greatest arena in the world and one of the greatest developments in the world across the street. That's our commitment to this city and to hockey in this marketplace. And it's not a short-term commitment. It's a long-term commitment, and relative to our discussions about Kenny and what he did in Detroit, I think the eliteness of the system and team and process that he developed, for me, is what I want to see. You saw what happened in the first round of the playoffs this year. If you get in, it's like another season. Anything can happen. And, our objective has to be competitive year in and year out, and that's what builds an elite team. And I can tell you, with the core that we have in the playoffs, these young guys, I just have a sense that we have the abilities to take it to another level. And that's what's exciting to me, is to build longevity and a franchise that fans can be proud of year after year. And that's exactly what Kenny did in Detroit. And relative to general managers who have done that in any sport, it's not just hockey. Ken Holland's on the top 10 list of general managers of every sport. Okay, so it's a unique individual that has this skill set and vision to create a culture, in your words, that can lead and develop this franchise into an elite team. And that's been Bob's objective from when we started to talk in the after the Olympic days, and it's we are very like-minded in that regard. And I think we're fortunate that, as Kenny said, we have the core with maybe the ability to do some things where we can be competitive very quickly. But make no mistake, our objective is to build the Oilers into one of the elite teams in the league who, every year, we're there. And if we get in, watch out.
Thanks, Darryl. Final question to the gentleman at the back.
Hi, Ken. Congratulations. Welcome to Edmonton. Gene Principe with Sportsnet. Had you envisioned that you would always kind of start and finish with the Red Wings, and when you kind of felt that pull, you mentioned how difficult it was maybe to leave, and Bob, when you went after Ken, what was sort of your game plan on selling the Oilers in Edmonton to him so you'd be here sitting today?
Your question was, did I envision myself being a Red Wing forever? Yeah, I did. And I think, one of the things that I've asked my people, the players through the years is to sacrifice, go to the minors, spend an extra time in the minors, to take a little bit less money. You got to take a little bit less. About sacrifice. It's about sacrifice. If you're going to win, everyone's got to sacrifice a little bit. And my time had come when Steve Yzerman stepped down in Tampa Bay. I realized it was my time to make that sacrifice. And I worked with Chris Ilitch, and ultimately I'm thrilled that the last move that I made as the general manager of the Detroit Red Wings was to step aside and hand the keys to Steve Yzerman. I got a great relationship with Steve. We're friends, we worked together. We had a player-manager relationship, and then after he retired, he worked in the front office with us for 4 years and went to Tampa Bay. And the Ilitches offered me, like I said, a very, very incredible offer to remain with the organization as a senior vice president. And I would say to you that my thinking at that point in time was that I was going to be a Red Wing for life and work with Steve and support him. And like I said, when I went over to the World Under 18s, I was only a week in, I was already getting itchy. And then Bob called, and you know, when I think about the Edmonton Oilers, and again, we've gone the players here, this franchise, the fan base, I just think there's an opportunity here for me to try to make a real positive impact on this franchise. After going through the process, all the conversations with Bob and with Darryl, them giving me full authority, that was important. There's things that I believe in, and they've given me that authority to believe in those things. Now I've got to make them happen. Now it falls on me. I have the responsibility to build that culture, to find ways to make the team a little bit better for the 1920 season, get into the playoffs, and keep growing and keep building and keep growing and adding pieces and building. That's what we did in Detroit. And again, there's huge pillars, foundation in that locker room. So there's a great start. And I've got to continue to build, to grow, and that team. So yes, the answer is yes. I thought that when Steve went, the day that Steve was there, I thought I would be there for life, but I also wasn't sure if I was going to get restless. And I told that to Chris Ilitch. I said, if down the road I get restless, and I got restless sooner than I thought.
Just to add to that, Gene, yes, I thought he was going to be a Detroit Red Wing forever, but I thought there might be a chance. And when I called Ken the first time, it was a short discussion. The next time was very lengthy. And what you've asked today, think of the questions you've asked today of Ken. That's what I got when I started to interview him. Passion, clear direction, how we wanted to move this organization forward, and that's what got myself really excited, why we needed Ken Holland in Edmonton. And we're able to deliver Ken to Darryl and to our fans. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thanks, everybody. We're going to end the press conference with a little photo op to officially welcome Ken to Oil Country. Thanks again for your attention today.
Yeah. Where do you want the picture? Just right here. Bob?
Hello, everyone. Jack Michaels, along with the new general manager of the Edmonton Oilers, Ken Holland. And Ken, this is not an everyday move. You got 36 years in Detroit, 22 as the GM, but 36 total. Back to your goaltending days.
Yeah.
Why Edmonton? It's a big move.
Yeah, well, you know what? I played junior hockey in Medicine Hat long time ago, so certainly I know I'm a Western Canadian. I'm born in Vernon, BC, so I love Western Canada. The Oilers have an incredible history. Obviously, have some great young players. I've got a relationship with Bob Nicholson through the years with Hockey Canada. And in 06, when the Red Wings played the Oilers in a playoff series, and you guys knocked us out and went on to the Stanley Cup Finals, I certainly got a first-hand look at the passion of this fan base. So passionate fan base, some great young players, and some great people. I'm looking forward to moving to Edmonton.
You're known as a relationship builder, and you touched on it real briefly. Part of the reason you arrive at this decision is your relationship with Bob Nicholson. Besides both being BC boys, what's the origin of that relationship, and how has it developed over time?
Well, I think it's based, I think Bob's got passion, Bob's got energy. I really got to know Bob probably, the early 2000s. In 2005, I was the assistant general manager of the World Championship team. Went to the Worlds. That was the year of the lockout, and spent a lot of time with Bob. Then 2006, I was the general manager in Latvia. 2010, part of the Olympic team. 2014, part of the Olympic team. And I knew Bob through hockey. Besides that, so I think that. I got a great respect for Bob. He's a people person.
That's what kind of person Bob is. What kind of person is Edmonton is getting? Because my scouting report says Ken Holland's the type of guy who's liable to ask anyone, what do you think? What do you think of the hockey team? What do you think? And someone close to you told me that unlike another good friend of yours, Scotty Bowman, you'll actually care what that person has to say.
I consider myself a people person. I got a lot of passion. I love talking to people. I'm going to be accessible, whether it's the media, whether it's hockey people. Before the games, I'm going to be in the media lounge. I'm going to be available. I talk to people. I ask them their opinions, and I gather. You gather information. You gather information. Ultimately, when it's time to make a decision, I'm going to rely on key people, on my gut instincts, my experience. The people that are in my inner circle, that I trust their opinion as I go towards making a decision. But I do enjoy people that are in the business, talking to them, and what do you think of the team? What do you think the team needs? And I certainly will listen. I'll engage in a conversation because I like people. I enjoy time with people.
Do you have a handful of decisions you need to make over the next, let's say, 6 weeks? Have you delved enough into this process to already have a short to-do list that's at the forefront of your mind? Yeah,
I've got some things in my mind that, obviously this is the critical time. In the National Hockey League, from the time your team's season is over until early to mid-July, that's the time when you're going to make the decisions that are going to really impact your team in 1920. Obviously, July 1st is free agency. There's the entry draft. You got to have your amateur meetings. There's the NHL Combine. You got to have your pro meetings. You got to negotiate contracts of players whose contracts are up. And then obviously there's staff, and you got to. There's always, even I was in Detroit for 22 years as a manager. Sometimes people leave to go other organizations, or you got to make a move. I've believed my management style is on stability, and I believe we're all people. We're not perfect. We make mistakes, and sometimes when you make mistakes, it helps you the next go around or the next decision that you make. Hopefully the mistake isn't too big. So I try to support people, hire people, support people, jump in, give them my thoughts, but at the end, when I hire somebody, whether it's the head coach, the chief amateur scout, my assistant general manager who ran our farm team in Grand Rapids, I try to give people the responsibility to run in their department. Obviously, it's got to run through me, but I try to create an environment with my staff that everybody feels a part of, that we are a team. Trying to do off the ice what the team on the ice is trying to do.
For so many years in Detroit, That stability you're talking about was anchored around 4 people, yourself, Mike Babcock, and 2 pretty good players, Henrik Zetterberg and Pavel Datsyuk. The Oilers have 2 pretty good players. Their lockers are right behind us, in Connor McDavid and Leon Draisaitl. What do those building blocks have to do in terms of impacting your decision to come here?
Well, they're massive. They're massive. You know, at the end of the day, it's about players. You know, and when you got great players, they determine the outcome of games in a positive way more often. So certainly, 2 massive building blocks. And they're young. There's a chance they could get better. It's not like they're 30 years old. I mean, they're in their early 20s. So obviously 2 massive building blocks. I look forward to getting to know them, as people, as young people. But certainly great players. And Yzerman, Fedorov, Zetterberg, Datsyuk, you look around the other teams, you got to have those core of players that you build around, and certainly with the Oilers, they've got that core.
Ken, you mentioned, one of those pieces will be the head coach you hire. Has that process, at least in your mind, already started? And is that the immediate focal point for you? Because as you mentioned, there's so many other things at work here over the next 6 weeks, culminating in the draft in Vancouver.
Yeah, certainly making a decision on the head coach is going to be, it's a key decision in every organization. That's you got your general manager and your head coach, you got to work hand in hand. And so certainly, as I go forward here, that's going to be probably priority number 1.
Ken, you're not going to be able to get out of town to collect your things without running into a season seat holder on your way out of town. I guarantee you someone's not only going to see you, they'll recognize you. And knowing Edmonton the way I do, they're going to ask you, well, what happens next? What are you going to tell them?
Well, you know what? I'm not coming into town with any magic wands. Right. I look at it, you got to build it brick by brick. It's, you got to build the foundation. And part of the foundation, a big part of the foundation is here, and now you got to go to work on, building the entire roster. So I got to talk to some people. Obviously, I watched Edmonton play on TV, but in the wintertime, I wasn't expecting I was going to be the general manager of the Edmonton Oilers. So you watch the game, and so I got to talk to as many people as I can here in a short order. I got to gather up thoughts of people that have been around the team, and I've got my thoughts, but I want to get the people's thoughts that have been around this team to piece together a plan. We're going to have pro scouting meetings here in a week. We're going to have amateur scouting meetings in a week. I look forward to meeting the staff, spending some time with them, getting input on what they think of the team. And again, I've got my thoughts, but it's from a distance, it's from afar, and I want to get people's opinions that are in close. So I would tell that season ticket holder that I'm going to gather information as quickly as I possibly can. The goal, I want to come in here, want to be in the playoffs in 1920. And you look at the Stanley Cup playoffs, you just got to get in. You just got to get in. Seeding doesn't matter. It's parity, and it's hard over 82 games. So how do we make the team a little bit better coming up? That's what I got to figure out. Certainly, the decision on the coach is going to be critical. And then what moves can we make to make the team better? Certainly there's some young people in this organization. Bakersfield's into round 2 of the playoffs. They had a great year. I'm sure there's some young players that are very close there. So I got to gather information quickly, because there's got to be decisions that are going to be made here from the middle of June to the middle of July that's going to impact the team in 1920.
Ken, thanks so much for your time. Welcome to town. And here's another piece of info for you. My absolute limit is a $5 Nassau. You're not going to press me at the turn.
Okay, thanks. I'm excited to be here, and look forward to getting to know everybody better.
And following this morning's formal announcement that Ken Holland will be the new president of hockey operations and Oilers general manager Jack Michaels now joins me. Jack, you did have the opportunity to sit one-on-one with Ken yesterday. Just first impressions overall.
Well, decisiveness. Right off the top of my head, there was that comment that he said right away, oh, I've got a to-do list. I mean, this has been a whirlwind time for him because not only had he just, kind of been accepting of a senior vice president position with the Detroit Red Wings, but then he got on a plane and went over to Europe for the World Under-18s. And so, you've got all that going on, and now he's got to digest this new challenge, and he's already obviously got a battle plan. I mean, coming out of today's conference, obviously, Ken Hitchcock will not be the head coach
already
of the Edmonton
making
Oilers.
Decisions.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
I mean, so decisiveness was the biggest thing. So Ken Hitchcock not back for 2019-20. Also addressed, the elephant in the room, Keith Gretzky, wants him to remain with the organization. Wasn't shy about saying that both to me and, at today's press conference. So he's got a battle plan, and I thought that was impressive considering that he's digesting 3.5 decades with another organization. In his own words, thinking he was going to be a Red Wing for the rest of his life, yet he's already dove headfirst into this challenge, made some assessments, made some decisions, and clearly has a plan moving forward. Even today, he said, there's going to be changes, and they're going to be coming in the next week or two. I'm going to take my time, but I also have a plan. And I think that decisiveness is something that at times the Edmonton market feels like the Oilers have been more toe in the water. I don't think Ken Holland, anything he said today indicates any sort of hesitation about what needs to be done.
Well, and just going off of that, you look at his resume, he led the Red Wings to 3 Stanley Cups. Do you think that experience would bode well in Edmonton? I know he mentioned we have an extremely passionate fan base. Can he do it?
It's why he's here. That's why he's here. That resume is why he's here. And ultimately, Bob Nicholson, after sifting through a ton of quality candidates, and don't get me wrong, there's a ton of quality people out there. And if we were talking about someone else today, we'd have plenty of positives to focus on in that regard. But clearly, Bob Nicholson is thinking, I've got the resume I've always wanted. Why would I choose someone else over a guy who's got 3 Stanley Cups to his credit, who was part of a winning organization for 36 years, and an organization that was mired in mediocrity for so long? When he transitioned from being a goaltender in that organization to a scout, the Red Wings had been dreadful for years. They had been one of those teams in the history of the league that had missed the playoffs 12 out of 13 years. And he was part of a staff that slowly built them into the organization they became in the 90s and 2000s. So when Bob Nicholson looked at that, for him it was a no-brainer. And as far as whether he can do it, I don't know that, and no one does. But what I do know is he's got a plan to do it. And he said in his own words, maybe it'll work out, maybe it won't. Yeah. But he's got an idea of what he wants to accomplish.
Well, and like you said, he said that, 22 years as GM of the Red Wings, no, he's not going to be perfect every single time. He's not going to make the right moves. Yeah. That's exactly it, right? Everybody is human, but we just have to wait it out and see what happens here. And he's off to Bakersfield tomorrow, I believe he said, to check out our prospects and go from there and make those changes.
Well, that's the benefit of experience, Jess. And again, I think it's another kind of notch on a resume that Bob Nicholson just couldn't overlook, is when you have the benefit of experience and you realize that perhaps you sign a player to a contract that isn't working out, in his terms, it's a bump in the road. It's nothing to get rattled about. It's something that all 31 teams in the National Hockey League, every one of them has a contract they probably regret. When you have the mindset and experience of having fought through that and having known that not every decision you make is going to be a home run, you're more than content with piling on doubles and triples until your team is a perennial contender. And I think that breadth of experience and understanding what a GM is and what, again, there's going to be some bumps in the road. I think that's important, especially in a marketplace like this, where at times there's an overreaction to almost everything that goes on.
Well, and I think a really important piece of the puzzle is that he's excited to be here. Like you said, he thought he'd be a Red Wing for life. He's excited to be back in Alberta, back in the prairies. He has family here. it seems like a good fit.
Well, and you know what? You know why else he's excited? He's got two big pieces to the puzzle, and their names are Connor McDavid and Leon Draisaitl.
Or the dynamic duo.
Absolutely. I mean, he's got a young core to build around, and that's something he talked about. He had in Detroit with a veteran presence of Steve Yzerman and Nick Lidstrom when he first got there, and then as he moved on in his career, the anchors were Henrik Zetterberg and Pavel Datsyuk, and those guys kept Detroit in contention for years. And lest we forget, a lot of people are going to nitpick and say, well, what about the last couple of years? He had directives from the Ilitch family to keep that playoff streak intact, and I think he made some decisions to keep that streak of making to the postseason 25 years in a row, that without that directive, he might have gone a different way. And the fact of the matter is, he makes a good point. Detroit was very close this year. They lost a ton of one-goal games, and that is a team moving forward that has a lot of picks coming up in the next 2 or 3 NHL entry drafts. They're going to be loaded for bear, and part of the reason that I think Detroit will have success in a few years is what Ken Holland laid as far as a foundation for the next phase of the Red Wings. But the Oiler fans don't want to hear about that. They want to hear about the next phase of the Edmonton Oilers, and I think your point about his excitement derives mostly from the fact that he knows he already has those foundational pieces. I mean, Connor McDavid, Leon Draisaitl, there's not too many teams in the league that can say they've got two pieces like that.
Absolutely. Jack, thank you so much. And Ken Holland just announced new general manager of the Edmonton Oilers, and you can catch Jack's one-on-one with him on edmontonoilers.com.